The sun was setting over Bamako, tainting the sky with a blood-orange hue. Colonel Assimi Goïta, the young interim president of Mali, walked briskly through the corridors of the Kuluba Palace. His face, usually impassive, betrayed an unusual tension tonight. His slightly narrowed eyes scanned every corner, every shadow. "Mr. President, they are waiting for you," announced his aide-de-camp, opening the door to the crisis room. Around the oval table sat his most loyal generals, those who had supported him during his rise to power in August 2020. The atmosphere was heavy, electric. No one spoke. Goïta took his seat at the head of the table and took a deep breath. "Gentlemen, I have received information that can no longer be ignored," he declared in a firm voice, placing a green folder on the table. "A coup d'état is being prepared against our government." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Colonel Diallo, in charge of military intelligence, slid several photographs across the table. "These images were taken 3 days ago. Mr. President, secret meetings, arms transfers, coded communications. Certain high-ranking officers are involved." Silence fell over the room again as Goïta examined the documents one by one. His expression hardened when he saw the names of the conspirators. "I recognize several of these men," he murmured. "Officers I personally promoted." He stood abruptly, slamming his hand on the table. "We act tonight, mount a coordinated operation. I want all these men arrested before dawn. But understand me clearly," he added, sweeping his gaze across the assembly. "No unnecessary violence. The Malian people need justice, not vengeance." Colonel Diallo nodded. "And for the civilians involved, sir? The same. No one is above the law. No one." The following hours were a whirlwind of activity. Military helicopters discreetly flew over the capital, while elite units positioned themselves around targeted residences. At midnight sharp, the operation was launched simultaneously across the country. Dawn was barely breaking when Goïta received the first reports. The operation was a resounding success. 23 officers and 11 civilians had been arrested without a single shot fired. Weapons caches had been uncovered, compromising documents seized. A few hours later, crowds began to gather spontaneously in the streets of Bamako. The news had spread like wildfire. Chants rose. "Goïta, defender of the people, Assimi, our protector." That evening, the president addressed the nation in a televised speech. "People of Mali, we have foiled an attempt to destabilize our country. I promise you that all those responsible will be judged in accordance with our laws. No traitor will go unpunished." After his speech, Goïta returned to his office. He was exhausted but satisfied. Colonel Diallo was waiting with a new report. "Mr. President, we have interrogated the main suspects. One of them said something strange. What was it?" General Ouedraogo declared, "You haven't yet discovered who's really pulling the strings." Then he refused to say more. A chill ran down Goïta's spine. He had the unsettling feeling that something was still eluding him. "Continue the interrogations. I want to know who else is involved." Diallo hesitated. "There's something else, sir. We found this document in General Ouedraogo's residence." Goïta took the paper. It was a list of names. His eyes scanned the document quickly until they stopped abruptly on one name. His blood ran cold. The paper slipped from his fingers and fell slowly to the floor. On it, circled in red, a name, Moussa Sanogo, his childhood best friend. Assimi Goïta stared at the name on the document as if hoping that by looking long enough the letters would rearrange into another name, Moussa Sanogo. Those two words echoed in his mind like a distant echo, bringing with them an avalanche of memories. "Mr. President, do you know this person?" asked the colonel, noticing the sudden change in Goïta's demeanor. Goïta pulled himself together, masking his turmoil. "Continue the interrogations, Colonel. I need to think." Alone in his office, he approached the window. In the distance, the lights of Bamako twinkled in the night. How could Moussa be involved? His friend, his brother, images flooded back. Two boys running barefoot through the dusty streets of Ségou, their laughter echoing against the ochre walls of the houses. The makeshift ball they passed back and forth until night forced them to go home. Musa, taller and stronger, defending the frail Assimi against a gang of bullies outside school. "No one touches my brother," Musa had declared that day, standing in front of Assimi like a human shield. The years had passed, but their friendship remained unshakable. At 18, sitting on the banks of the Niger, they had made a pact. "One day, we will change this country," Assimi had said, his eyes shining with ambition. "Together," Musa had added, gripping his hand, "for justice and for the people." Then their paths diverged. Assimi joined the army, rising through the ranks. Musa went to study abroad before returning to work in public administration. They saw each other less often, but each reunion was as if they had never parted. After his rise to power, Goïta had naturally offered his friend a position in his government, but Musa had declined, claiming he wanted to stay close to the people. "I'll be more useful in the field than locked in a ministry," he had explained. Goïta now shook his head, incredulous. Was it a mistake? A manipulation to destabilize him? He called his head of security. "I want discreet surveillance on Musa Sanogo. No arrest, no interrogation, just information, and no one else is to know." The following days were difficult. While the country celebrated the dismantling of the plot, Goïta bore the weight of this terrible suspicion alone. Reports arrived regularly on his desk. Musa was apparently leading a normal life, working at the Ministry of Development, visiting his mother on Fridays, playing soccer with neighborhood kids. Then, one morning, an agent brought him a USB drive. "Mr. President, we intercepted this. It's surveillance footage from a warehouse in Bamako's industrial zone, dated 3 days before our operation against the putschists." The video showed Musa discreetly entering an abandoned building. He emerged 2 hours later, looking worried, nervously glancing around. "The warehouse belongs to a shell company linked to General Ouedraogo," the agent specified. Goïta's heart sank. Another report arrived the next day, an audio recording captured during a secret meeting. Musa's voice was unmistakable. "The system is corrupt from within," he said. "We must change everything from the inside out. The time is near." Goïta listened to the audio repeatedly, searching his friend's tone for a clue, an explanation that wasn't betrayal. "It could be fake," he murmured to himself, his eyes moist. He would never do this, but the evidence piled up. More meetings, more recordings, suspicious money transfers, contacts with individuals now behind bars for attempting a coup. A week after the surveillance began, Goïta made his decision. He had to know, to hear the truth from Musa's own mouth, not as president but as a friend. "Prepare an unmarked car," he ordered his aide-de-camp. "I'll go to Ségou alone tomorrow morning. But Mr. President, that violates all security protocols." "I'm not asking for your opinion, Captain. No one is to know." The captain hesitated. "At least allow a security team to follow at a distance." Goïta reluctantly agreed. "Fine, but they only intervene on my explicit order." The next day, at the first light of dawn, a modest Peugeot quietly left the Kuluba Palace. At the wheel, dressed in a simple bubu, Assimi Goïta drove toward his past, and perhaps toward the most painful confrontation of his life. The road between Bamako and Ségou rolled by under the Peugeot's wheels. Assimi Goïta drove in silence, his mind tormented by unanswered questions. The arid landscape of the Malian savannah contrasted with the storm raging in his heart. After 4 hours of driving, he finally reached the outskirts of Ségou. The historic city had hardly changed since his childhood. The same dusty streets, the same colorful markets, the same great mosque with its minaret proudly rising toward the sky. Goïta bypassed the city center, taking back roads he knew by heart. His vehicle eventually turned onto a dirt path leading to an isolated village about 10 kilometers from the city. It was there that Musa's family had owned a house for generations, a place where he had often retreated as a teenager to escape the urban hustle. He parked the car under the shade of a centuries-old baobab and stepped out, scanning the surroundings. No signs of life, except for a few goats lazily grazing on sparse grass. The security team that had followed at a distance positioned itself discreetly around the perimeter, invisible but present. The house hadn't changed. A simple mud brick structure, thatched roof, small shaded veranda. Goïta approached slowly, his heart pounding. He knew Musa was there. His agents had confirmed it. He stopped before the closed door, hesitating for a moment, then knocked 3 short times. No response. He gently pushed the door, which opened without resistance. The interior was shrouded in darkness, offering welcome relief from the crushing afternoon heat. His eyes gradually adjusted to the dim light. In the center of the main room, kneeling on a prayer mat, was Musa Sanogo. He was finishing his prayer, seemingly unaware of his visitor's presence. Goïta waited in silence. Observing this man he had known since childhood, searching his silhouette for a hint of the betrayal he feared. Musa finally stood and turned toward him. Their eyes met. Time seemed to stop. "I knew you'd come," Musa said at last, his voice calm. Sooner or later, Goïta remained still, studying his childhood friend's face. He saw the same familiar features, but also something new, something hard that he didn't recognize. "Why?" he asked simply, his voice trembling slightly despite his efforts to remain composed. Musa held his gaze unflinchingly. "Because you forgot me, Assimi. You forgot all of us. What are you talking about? Our dreams, our promises." Musa gestured around the room. "Look around you. This village hasn't changed since our childhood. No running water, no stable electricity, no future for the young. What have you done for them since you took power?" Goïta absorbed the blow. "I took power barely 4 years ago in a country on the brink of chaos, besieged by jihadists, abandoned by its international partners." "Excuses," Musa cut in. "You've become like the others, Assimi, a palace man, cut off from reality. So that's why? That's why you allied with traitors who wanted to overthrow the legitimate government?" A heavy silence settled. Musa approached the window, gazing at the landscape outside. "I joined them because I believed you had strayed from what we stood for. Justice, equality, a Mali for all, not just the Bamako elite. You could have talked to me," Goïta said, his voice almost pleading. "We grew up together, fought together. You were my brother, Musa. Would you have listened?" Musa turned back to him. "Or would you have sent one of your generals to meet me, like you did with the delegation of elders from our village when they tried to see you?" Goïta lowered his eyes. It was true. In the whirlwind of power he had delegated, prioritized, sometimes forgotten. "Are you still that boy who dreamed of changing the world?" Musa asked. "Or have you become just another man in uniform on a fleeting throne?" Tears welled in Goïta's eyes. Not tears of weakness, but of rage, pain, disillusionment. "I've made mistakes," he admitted, "but I've always acted for the good of the country. I would never have conspired against a friend." "Sometimes friendship demands hard truths," Musa replied. "And sometimes betrayal is still betrayal, no matter the justification," Goïta retorted, his voice regaining its firmness. The two men looked at each other for a long time, each searching the other's eyes for a trace of their former friendship. "What do we do now?" Musa finally asked. Goïta discreetly pulled out his phone and sent a message. "I do what duty demands, even if it breaks my heart." Footsteps sounded outside. The door burst open, and 4 soldiers in combat gear, weapons in hand, entered. "Musa Sanogo, you are under arrest for high treason and complicity in an attempted coup d'état," announced the officer commanding the unit. Musa didn't resist. He extended his wrists for the handcuffs, never taking his eyes off Goïta's face. Silent tears now streamed down his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Assimi," he murmured as they led him away. For everything. Left alone in the empty house, Goïta collapsed into a chair, his face buried in his hands. Outside, the sun began to set, bathing the savannah in a golden light that no longer warmed his heart. The arrest of Musa Sanogo sent shockwaves through Mali. National and international media seized the story, with headlines about the traitor friend or fraternal betrayal. Photos of Musa and Goïta together in their youth circulated on social media, accompanied by comments ranging from sympathetic to accusatory. For many Malians, Musa was a respected figure, an upright man who had worked tirelessly for rural communities. His involvement in the plot seemed inconceivable. How can you betray your own brother? Some wondered. Perhaps he had his reasons. Others muttered, more critical of the regime. At the Kuluba Palace, an unusual silence reigned. Assimi Goïta had retreated to his private quarters, canceling all his appointments. Only his closest advisors were allowed to see him, and even then, only for urgent state matters. On the third day after the arrest, the Minister of Justice knocked on his door. "Come in," came a weary voice. The minister found Goïta seated by a window, gazing at the city below. Piles of untouched files sat on his desk. "Mr. President, we need to discuss the trial of the putschists." Goïta didn't respond immediately. His gaze was fixed on an old photograph he held in his hands. It showed two young men in military uniforms, arm in arm, smiling at the camera. "It must be a fair trial," he said finally. "Transparent, open to international observers." The minister nodded, uneasy. "And for Sanogo, some suggest special treatment, given your shared history." Goïta set the photo down abruptly. "The law is the same for everyone, even for him." After the minister left, Goïta continued his silent vigil by the window. An envelope on his desk caught his attention. It had arrived that morning. The shaky handwriting on the yellowed envelope was that of an elderly person. He opened it carefully. "My dear Assimi, I write to you as the one who watched you and my grandson grow up. I will not defend what he did. Betrayal is betrayal, even if driven by ideals. But know that he loved you like a brother until the end. Perhaps it was that very love, twisted by disappointment, that led him down this dark path. May Allah guide your decisions and ease your heart." Goïta reread the letter several times, his hands trembling. He vividly remembered Mamie Fatumata, the wise old woman who had so often welcomed them into her modest home, offering sweet tea and stories about the Mali Empire. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was his Minister of Foreign Affairs. "Mr. President, the international press is demanding a statement. Your silence is fueling rumors." He hesitated before adding, "Some say this affair has broken you." Goïta gave a bitter laugh. "Broken? No, changed, certainly. We can draft a firm statement showing your resolve in the face of betrayal." "No," Goïta interrupted. "I will address the nation myself, tonight." That night, in a sober and emotional televised address, Assimi Goïta spoke directly to his people. "Citizens of Mali, I address you not only as your president, but as a man who has faced the most painful of trials, the betrayal of a dear friend." He paused, visibly struggling to maintain his composure. "Justice will run its course for all the accused, without exception. But I wanted to tell you that the real pain didn't come from the attempted coup. It came from the loss of a brother." Across the country, Malians watched their young president with a mix of respect and compassion. For the first time, they saw beyond the uniform and title a vulnerable man, wounded but still standing. "I promise never to forget why I accepted this responsibility. To serve every Malian, in every village, in every neighborhood. If I have failed in that promise, I ask your forgiveness and pledge to do better." The next day, Goïta made a surprising decision. He strictly forbade any harassment or retaliation against Musa's family. "Justice concerns the guilty, not their relatives," he declared firmly during a cabinet meeting. His Minister of Security protested. "But sir, some family members could be complicit." "Then investigate properly," Goïta snapped. "But I will not tolerate persecution based on family ties." Weeks passed. Goïta gradually resumed his duties, but those who knew him well noted a change in him. He was more thoughtful, more attentive, less quick to anger. The betrayal had transformed him. "Assimi, words cannot express my regret. I thought I was acting out of conviction, but I now understand that loyalty and honesty should have prevailed. I mistook your silence for indifference, your pragmatism for abandonment. Too late. I understood what true loyalty means. You have always been true to your word, even when it broke your heart." This is a lesson I will never forget, whatever my sentence. Forgive me, my brother. Musa. Goïta read the letter without visible expression. He didn't respond, but that night, he slipped it into the inner pocket of his uniform. Against his heart, time passed. The trial of the putschists concluded, and sentences were handed down. Justice was served. Without vengeance, but without leniency. Musa was sentenced to 10 years in prison, a lighter penalty than that of the main plot organizers, but without special concessions. A year after the attempted coup, Goïta decided to mark the event in an unexpected way. He had a sober monument erected in the capital. 3 black granite pillars symbolizing truth, justice, and fraternity. On the base, an inscription: "A nation is built on trust, but strengthened by trials." At the inauguration, a huge crowd gathered. For the first time in a long while, there were no partisan divisions, no factional flags, just a people united in a moment of reflection and remembrance. Goïta delivered a short but powerful speech. This monument is not here to celebrate a victory or mourn a defeat. It is here to remind us that our true enemies are neither foreign nations nor even the individuals who betray us. Our true enemies are the mistrust, injustice, and division that erode our hearts. As the ceremony drew to a close, a little boy timidly approached to offer flowers to the president. Goïta bent down to receive them. "What's your name, young man?" he asked with a smile. "My name is Musa, Mr. President," the child replied. A shadow passed over Goïta's face. Then a smile, melancholy but sincere, lit up his features. He hugged the child with visible emotion. Later, as night fell over Bamako, Goïta lingered alone before the monument. The stars began to appear in the African sky, silent witnesses to human dramas and hopes. On the black screen that concluded this story, a sentence slowly appeared.